continue on some of the terminology and some of the issues that come along with sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system disbalance. So we have this seesaw. It is tipping in the direction of the sympathetic nervous system. Essentially, what does that mean? What it means is we are driving our nervous system that is responsible for keeping us up, keeping us motivated, stimulating the metabolism, keeping us active. Now, we can't go on like that forever. This would be like taking a sports car, getting out on the highway, driving as long and as fast as you can without ever pulling over for gas or anything like that. Eventually, you're going to run out of gas, you're going to lose a tire, your muffler's going to fall off, that engine is going to be damaged. But that is what we are doing when we are pushing this sympathetic nervous system. What we call that, for lack of a better term, is sympathetic overdrive. Imagine that sports car flying down the Autobahn, never ever pulling over, going as fast and as furious as they possibly can. Chances are they're going to end up getting in a wreck or really mess up that car. And that is essentially what's happening. Let's look at some of the key dysfunctions related to the sympathetic nervous system and also parasympathetic nervous system, some of the key benefits it has. Well, the first thing with the sympathetic nervous system is it increases MR, or metabolic rate. So you might say, well, that's great. Yes, that's great for burning fat, only if it's acute. But when it continues and it's unabated, now you're that sports car that is driving fast and furious and is going to end up crashing. What happens when your metabolic rate is stimulated or your metabolism is stimulated too long, too fast? That's another term for that is chronic stress, by the way. When that happens, your body stops responding. The hypothalamus becomes irritated. The hormonal system shuts down. You eventually crash and burn. Another term for this in the athletic circles is overtraining. A really extreme term for this in the world of warfare is post-traumatic stress syndrome. Much of what is going on in overtraining, post-traumatic stress syndrome, all those kinds of things is a severe stress, whether emotional or physical, leading to this really increased metabolic production that then eventually falls down and breaks. Parasympathetic system is all about relaxing the nervous system. So what happens is you're designed to stimulate and recover. Stimulate and recover. You're not designed to stimulate, because when you do that, then you crash and will not recover. So you need this balance. This is why we have the dualistic, diphasic nature of natural health that is sort of encapsulated in the yin and yang, the Chinese medicine symbol of yin and yang. Sympathetic is the yang, parasympathetic is the yin. Sympathetic system shuts down digestion. The parasympathetic increases digestion. So think of recovery when you think of parasympathetic system. Motivation and focus are certainly stimulated in the sympathetic nervous system. So that's a good thing, right? That gets you up and going. But why, when your metabolic rate or your metabolism crashes, as it does in metabolic damage and metabolic dysfunction, do you lose motivation and focus? Because you've driven that car too fast, too long. Now it can no longer stimulate itself. The engine is broken. The parasympathetic helps you relax and recover. We call this push until you can't, rest until you can. We use that analogy or that proverb or that saying in relation to both exercise and in terms of lifestyle. So if you want to keep the sympathetic and parasympathetic balanced, you want to think about rest-based living. You should never be over pushing yourself without also balancing the relaxation response. Too much sympathetic overdrive leads to a decreased immune system. The parasympathetic system, the opposite. It helps stimulate the immune system. This is why you may be getting increased colds and flus and things like that every single time a bug comes around, because your immune system cannot handle that. Another interesting thing about this is that some people who have sympathetic overdrive, what ends up happening with the sympathetic nervous system is in the beginning, it's stimulated and it's going like crazy. And some people can stay up like this for a very long time. Sometimes, though, it crashes, right? It crashes and burns. Your individual metabolism determines whether you are one of these people that just keeps driving the machine faster and faster and faster and never really crashes but still suffers the damage of that. Maybe you're feeling what we call wired. but tired because, of course, you're still doing damage, or you're the type of person that does crash and burn, in which case you don't have the wired feeling. You just feel fatigued and depressed all of the time. This is an important thing to sort of understand in the sympathetic nervous system, because if you are of the wired but tired type of situation, what will happen is your immune system acts a little bit differently. What happens is you will never get sick until you go on vacation, or you take a break, or you have a break from work. Then all of a sudden you get sick, because what happens is you're used to pushing yourself hard, then you relax the nervous system, then you notice that your nervous system is dysfunctional and your immune system is low, and then you get sick. Other people in this situation get sick constantly. So it could be either extreme. Either you only get sick when you go on vacations, or you're getting sick all the time. Both of those are dysfunction of sympathetic nervous system disorder. Now, sympathetic nervous system burns. It burns fat and it burns muscle. So these people tend to be the skinny fat type of people. Yes, they burn fat, but they burn more muscle. And over time, as you begin losing more and more muscle, the body isn't going to like that so much. So what ends up happening is it will end up wanting to store the fat, losing the muscle. You end up flabby and thin. That's obviously not what we want. And so oftentimes people with sympathetic nervous system dysfunction may notice, wow, my body just doesn't feel as tight as it once did. Whereas if you give yourself time to relax, you're able to build your muscle. And then sleep in the sympathetic disorder becomes severely disrupted. And in the parasympathetic balance gets you back on track for sleeping. So I want you to be aware of a number of differences between the sympathetic system, the parasympathetic system. What happens when you push into sympathetic overdrive? Some people can stay there doing damage and feel wired but tired and have all these effects. Other people only can be there for a little while before they crash, but they still have all this dysfunction. The fix is balancing this, pushing the system back into the parasympathetic mode, which is oftentimes very, very difficult for people who find themselves in this situation because they're used to pushing so hard.